Hi there, and welcome back. I'm going to tell you a story and a tale of two cameras, and with a lesson to be learned at the end of that. I will tell this story with a slideshow as a backdrop, using images from both cameras along the way. Let us begin. A story of two cameras, the Leica Q and the Leica M240. This is a story about two cameras, how I came to own both the Q and the QP, and then the M240, and why I in the end decided to have only the Leica M240. But let's start from the beginning. Back up around 7 years ago, I was using Nikon and Fuji cameras. And I went to Paris with the Fuji X-T1, and I loved it. Around that time, I heard about the Leica Q, and I started to love the idea of owning one at some point in my life. After a lot of consideration, I sold all my Fuji gear and got a Leica Q Titanium. It was beautiful, and it really lived up to all my expectations. It was the perfect camera for documentary photography. Fast forward a few years, I made a crazy decision and again went for a new Fuji X-T3 this time, with lenses, and I sold my beloved Q. I had my doubts almost immediately, and a nagging feeling of making a bad choice started to root inside me. And after yet another period of reflecting and accepting I had made a serious error, I started to look around for the best option of getting a Leica Q yet again. At this time, the Leica Q came out, and I went back and forth over the pros and cons of the Q versus the Q2. Right away I established that the features of the Q2 was not worth the extra amount of money, for me at least. The only hesitation was that the Q was now older and was hard to get new in my neck of the wood. The answer came in the way of the Leica QP, the stealthier new limited edition of the original Q. I was never a fan of the red dot on the front of the camera anyway, so the look of the QP really appealed to me. It also came with an extra battery, and they had made some changes to the shutter button from the original Q that made it sturdier and nicer to press. The camera also came with a very nice leather strap from Leica. The QP was announced in 2018. Had the same 24 megapixel CMOS sensor and lovely 28mm f1.7 Summilux lens. It has an extremely nice black matte finish that is very durable and protected from scratches. With the Leica text up top, the coloring scheme with the numbers, the red numbers on the camera, together with the black matte finish, it was one of the most beautifully made cameras I had ever held in my hands. I already loved the original Q, so this was only like the pinnacle of that. It is to date one of the very few special cameras I have ever used or owned. And depending on one's needs, it really is as perfect a documentary tool as there ever was, in my opinion. The fast AF, the beautiful lens, giving the images a very distinct look, and a beautifully made compact body with a very manageable 24 megapixel files, that for my needs were perfect. The only thing I would have liked, and I envied, of the Q2 was that weathered sealing. But then again, the Q never had any issues for me earlier, and I always felt quite safe taking the Q to different situations and environments. I took some of my favorite digital images, and most important images, with the first Q I owned, like the birth of my son, for example, which I also filmed with the Q, by the way. Being happy I had video at all, even though film not being the best in the Q, after all. This continued on with the QP, and I used it regularly for a few years, and it was very precious to me. Many say that the Q is a gateway into Leica M cameras, and this was also the case for me, for good and for bad. Around this time I started shooting analog again, and I always dreamed of shooting an M2, an M3 or even an M4, back when I shot film. But those cameras, back in those days, were always out of my budget, and I couldn't afford one. I did not want to part with the possibility of shooting a digital Leica, but at the same time I wanted an analog one. So I started to look for a used option to maybe get an older digital Leica, and at the same time finance an M4 with the selling of my Leica QP. A man I talked to wanted to make a trade using his M4 and some lenses for my QP. I did not want to regret my decision, in the same way like when I sold my Q the first time. So I made sure I could find a digital body too, so I could switch lenses between the M4 and that digital body. After trading the QP for my M4, I sold off some of my lenses and ended up finding a used M240. And after reading a lot, I felt that the Leica M240 would make a great rebound after my QP was sold. The M4 was a beautiful camera, and so was the Leica M240. even though I had not started warming up to it as I had instantly with the Q. That was to be expected though, the M240 after all being a rangefinder, a totally different experience and process from shooting the Q. It was not taking the same place as a fast documentary tool that the Q had become for me earlier. Both the M4 and the M240 was about pure photography in general. The slower process of enjoying shooting a rangefinder and experiencing lovely Leica lenses and other lovely crafted lenses made for the M. Eventually, I ended up selling my M4. I had several other analog cameras I loved using, so the M4 did not get as much use I had hoped for in the beginning. And it felt like more sense actually, financing a lens for the M240. I use so much more. So begins my story with the Leica M240, a full-frame 24 megapixel CMOS sensor camera. My particular camera had gone through some of its life already. It already had some beautiful brassing on the sides and the bottom. Came with a Olympus EFV and a leather half case, and a worn thumb grip, that also showing some beautiful brassing on the sides. The first lenses I had was a Voigtlander 35mm f1.7 Ultron, a Minolta 28mm f2.8 and a Voigtlander Color Helier 75mm f2.5 lens. All those lenses were great in their own rights, and the 35 Voigtlander got most used out of those lenses. They made for a great foundation to decide what lenses I eventually wanted for the M240. Except my analog cameras, the other digital cameras I had were heavier Nikon SLRs with heavy lenses. So the M240 was my only day-to-day digital camera, shooting the family and using it for street photography instead of the QP I had used before for that purpose. I already know in beforehand that the first phase would be a learning curve, and that the loss of my QP would be felt even more in the beginning because of the different style of photography with the respective cameras. But when I did nail focus or a moment with the M240, I felt almost as much satisfaction as with the former camera I used to have. Just like the Q, I felt the desire to pick it up and go out and shoot. It did not feel as effortless as with the Q, but it made me work more to get a better result in the end. And then the lenses, all with a different character and rendering, but all shared the same excellence when it came to image quality. By now, I have ended up with 3 lenses that I feel are right for me and my style of photography. The Leica 50 Summicron f2.0 version 4, that I just love for its character and shooting portraits with, and also candids. Then there is the Voigtlander 35mm f1.4 VM Classic, that I use for street photography and environmental portraiture. And last out, the Elmarit 28mm f2.8 that I use mostly for landscape and nature, but also for street photography and everyday documenting things around me. So was this story about two of my favorite cameras near its end. What is my conclusion and my reflections after using them over time? Which one do I prefer over the other? I might disappoint my audience now by saying none more than the other, as a matter of fact. I sometimes miss my Q for its size, its readiness, and effortlessness. And I still feel, for documenting everyday life, it's the best camera I ever had. But at the same time, the Leica M240 with the lenses I now own patch up some of those wounds that the Q left behind. And in the end, it's a camera that fills a lot of my other photographic needs, and that inspires me a lot. And that matters a lot. Which one would you prefer, do I ask now? Which one would you like to own and use over time? So, after that rather inconclusive ending to this tale, as I said, I'm curious to know about your conclusions and your reflections after using one or two of the cameras. I would greatly appreciate any comments at all after this video. I hope you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed making this video. And all that's left to say now is bye for now and over and out.